Hello and welcome to Makers.dev episode number 74. Chris, do you know what's special about the number 74?
I don't, but I think you're probably going to tell me.
I am about to. What if I gave you a hint that it has something to do with French maritime vessels?
Still nope.
I found out not 20 seconds ago that the 74 was a type of two-decked sailing ship of the line, which nominally carried 74 guns, developed by the French Navy in the 1740s.
Well, there you go.
There you go. That's my fun fact about the number 74.
All right.
Cool. How you doing? How was last week?
I am doing all right. The weather is nice here, so that's always good. This is Indiana, so weather can vary wildly even day to day, but it's nice. You were gone, and I reverted back to not doing SAS stuff, just like when I was gone. You didn't do SAS stuff. But that's okay. So I'm back on Kaggle stuff, and I like that. We can talk about that some, but I'm pouring a bunch of effort into Kaggle right now. Also, you were at a funeral. We can talk about this a little more, but I had a sort of an event like that too. One of my wife's friends in the neighborhood here, she's a little older, but she has breast cancer, and it's the bad kind. And she kind of had a birthday event where she got a food truck and invited a bunch of friends and family over, and you could tell that she did that because she thought, she didn't have much time left, basically. She had just been in the hospital, and so that plus you being at a funeral, I don't know, sort of made me reflect a little bit about what I'm doing and what I want to do with life. And so so that happened, but overall good. I mean, she was in good spirits, even though she had just been in the hospital and probably has to go back soon. So, but otherwise doing all right. How about you?
That's tragic that she's in that position, and I admire that she can still celebrate her life when she's facing imminent death. I had a lot of thoughts along similar lines being at a funeral. I'm curious what it sounds like you had some clarifying takeaways about what matters in life.
I'm still working through it a little bit, but I mean, it always makes you, whenever I don't know, at least as a 30 something year old, I don't think about death very much. And so when you do, it's you always think about what you're doing and what do you want to be doing and what do you wish that you had done at the end of the life. And so I don't know if I have any deep insights to share, but it just made me think about it, which is good, right? I mean, part of the human condition is thinking about that. So yeah.
Memento mori. I think it's very clarifying, and also puts things in perspective of like, what trifling bullshit am I worried about? That,
right.
My flight is, the schedule changed and I'm going to get there at a different time than I thought and I have to wake up a little. Who cares? Like, I'm alive and I get to continue living, and who knows how long I'll be able to continue living, and what I'd like to do with that limited time. There's at the funeral I went to. I'll talk about this now. It was for a uncle of mine on my dad's side, and his health has been declining over the past several years, and it went into a much steeper decline over the past few months. And he has a 17-year-old son, my cousin, and we found out this last week that he was going off of dialysis, which means like, okay, probably going to happen very soon. And then it happened. He died. And sort of separate from this, changing the mood a little bit, I'm very impressed with myself that I was able to figure out how to rearrange stuff in my schedule, rearrange stuff in Sarah's schedule. I'm so thankful for her. She was able to do the same thing and be there. I'm very thankful she was there for me. It was comforting to have her there. And I was able to like book flights for the next day and book hotel and book a car. And I at the beginning of the workday, this was right after we recorded the podcast last week, I'll let you know, like, okay, I'm going to spend a palm just like seeing if this is possible and what the flights would be. And the next palm I was like, okay, I'm pretty sure I'm going to do it, but we need to just iron out a few things and make sure that the schedule is going to work. And by the third palm I was like, all right, we're pulling triggers and we're buying flights, and then hotel comes after that, and then car comes after that. And I was able to get it done with me and Sarah, two people. I was able to arrange a flight and hotel and car in a different city for the next day, for the shortest trip I've ever taken on a plane. We landed at like 11 a.m. in Orlando, and then Spent that night there, and then the next morning there, and then flew out at like 6 p.m. the next day. So we were there for what, like 30 hours or something. That math's not right. Someone please correct my math. It was a very short amount of time. And I'm impressed with my competence that, like, in the middle of this tragedy, I was able to my life is flexible and structured enough that I was able to go and make this thing happen and go and do that. So that was a silver lining of it. But yeah, like, dying is terrifying. That's still something that really spooks me. And several moments in the funeral, I was just looking around thinking, like, man, everyone in this room is going to die, and I am one of those people. And man, like, I wish it didn't have to be this way, but this is how it is. And there are lots of things I'd like to be doing to try to prolong that as long as possible. And it's very clarifying of, like, you know, in the moment when I'm offered a piece of cake, I kind of want to be like, one piece of cake, it's fine. But like, when faced with death, of like, based on what I know about nutrition, eating this piece of cake, yes, of course, it's going to be great in the moment, but it's going to make you die sooner. Like, to have that clarified and just be steeped in that for, less than 30 hours has been clarifying. And I feel like I'm able to better think about decisions that are good for the long term as opposed to the short term by confronting the inevitability of death. And had some good cries, had some good existential crises, and had many more great connections with family and aunts and uncles and cousins. And I am very glad to be alive, and I'd like to continue doing it as long as possible.
Me too. Yeah. I don't have much more to say other than, let's keep doing what we're doing, I guess. I mean, keep being alive.
Cool. One of my takeaways that sort of interleaved with re-listening to episode 4 of the Makers of Death podcast, the best Bootstrapper podcast on the Bootstrapper podcast network. Episode 4 was the episode right after I got my wisdom teeth surgery. I had 4 wisdom teeth removed, and I'm still very proud of being able to do that. That was a very difficult thing for me to do, and I did it. And in the episode, I was talking about how I took like 2 or 3 days completely off to just nurse my wounds and be okay. And then in the podcast, I was lamenting, like, oh, but then on that 4th day, I really should have gotten more done. And like listening to myself from episode 4, like, dude, calm down. Like, this is a thing you do once in your life. Like, surgery is a big deal. Take the week off. Like, do something else. Read some books. Like, calm down. And in that period of my life, I think I was like feeling very productive and feeling the urge to just like get stuff done. And I think I needed that. I think after 3 days of not getting as much done, I was just feeling the itch of being more productive. And I had a focus of just wanting to optimize more systems and be able to bounce back quicker. But it was interesting retrospectively listening to that and thinking about what matters, especially in light of this funeral. I don't really care that I didn't get anything done on the 4th day. Like, right. I care that I took care of myself and was able to, recover from the wisdom teeth surgery quickly. I'm not even sure, even having just listened to the episode, I don't even remember what I was working on. So yeah, I think I'd like to give myself more grace in moments when I have other stuff going on that's not work, that still needs to be done, to do that, because that's what future me is going to appreciate more than making sure I'm, pushing forward file inbox as much as I can. That said, longitudinally, I would like that for that to be my default, that I am pushing it forward. But it's okay if I'm not.
Yeah. I mean, I get the feeling and the impulse though. Like, so I just went to my wife's brother's wedding, and that was nice. We went to San Diego for, I think I talked about this last time. It was like 4 or 5 days, and that was nice to, like, I got there, I did no work, we went to the beach, we went to the wedding, it was great. And then by the time I got back, I was ready to get working on things again, because that feels like, it's a comfortable place to be because we do it every day. And so I get the impulse to go back to what feels good, or at least comfortable, right?
That's a good way to frame it. That it's I'm doing work because I enjoy it. I'm doing work in the same way. I discovered this fantastic game called Baba Is You for Android. I don't know if we talked about this before. Yeah. It's amazing. Oh my gosh, it's these puzzles that everyone I look at, not everyone, most of them I look at, and I'm like, oh, here's this obvious solution to how they do this. I'm so smart. And I try to do that, and I'm like, oh, I can't do that because of this other thing. Oh, well, I could just do this thing, and then I'll be able to do that. And oh, no, that doesn't work because of this. How would I? Oh, okay, this third thing, and then the second. Nope, that doesn't work. Okay, let me stir this for another 10 minutes, and it's impossible. There's no possible way to do this. They've clearly made a mistake. This is a puzzle that there's some sort of a developer error, and I'm sure the next update they're going to push saying, so sorry, we published an impossible puzzle. And then after just chewing on it for like weeks, I'll come. Some of these puzzles, like a month will pass, and I'll have this insight of, oh my gosh, of course, it's this. This is the key I was missing to unlock this thing, and then it goes, and I'm able to do it. And I enjoy work for the same reason that I enjoy playing Baba Is You, because it's the same process. I'm staring at this thing, thinking this is impossible to be able to have file uploads that keep the folder structure, and then I'll just be chewing on it for weeks and months. And then one day I'll have an insight and think, oh my gosh, of course, I could use this brand new WebKit framework to be able to upload files and keep the hierarchy, and I could architect it this way. And then I do it, and then the problem yields to me, and I've done something that I previously thought was impossible, and that process is just a rush. And so when I play Baba Is You, that's just sort of on my phone. That's not really helping anyone else. It's fun. But the same process, from my perspective, of building software, like, that's also helping other people. And so if I could pick any activity to do, just as my baseline, this is the thing that I do with my time, of course I would want that to be software development. It's something I really enjoy intrinsically. I would be doing that even if it wasn't helping anybody else, as evidenced by Baba Is You. I would play that even though it's not helping anyone else. And also, this is a way that I can contribute to the world. This is a way that I can make other people's lives better, that I can improve their work processes. So that's becoming this new framing I have of what work is to me. It's not something I have to do. It's the best way for me to be spending my time because it's something I enjoy and it's a way that I can give back to the world.
Yeah, that's interesting. There's also a good segue, I don't know if it was intentional or not, into something I felt this week, which is getting into new Kaggle competitions. And you always have this like feeling that this is difficult and I don't like it and something is hard, just like your puzzles, right? And then at some point something clicks and you're like, oh, okay, now I like it and it's easy.
Yeah.
And so I just had an experience today. I started a new competition, or okay, it's not new. I have been sort of pre-working on it for a while, getting some stuff ready. And then I tried to actually do a submission today and it was like, this is hard. I don't want to do it. And then I finally got it done, or at least part of it. And yeah, it feels great again. And this same process with SAS, I think we talked about this many times before, but it's like, you know, it feels great when a switch flips and suddenly you feel good about something.
Yep.
Yeah.
Love it. Would love to dive into the Kaggle competitions because you're in some cool ones. Some of them we talked about before, but you showed me some stuff today that I'm like, whoa, that's cool. But I wanted to mention before we jump into that I was reminded also in re-listening to episode 4 that like there's this category of work of marketing that I have just had this phobia of, that like I know what the work looks like now and I'm not afraid of it anymore. Like I know how to make videos and how to make videos that help people solve particular problems, and I know how to answer Quora questions, and I know how to write blog posts that are things that people are Googling. But I haven't had consistent work in those directions. And it was clarifying re-listening to that episode, realizing that I still haven't really sunk my teeth into this marketing thing in the same way that you have for the last few weeks of writing your buyer's guide. Like I need to remember, you know, yes, I'm knee deep in this project of recoding file inbox to be serverless, but the reason I'm doing that and the reason I'm trying to get it done as quickly as possible is so that I can do the important work of marketing, because my weak point is not in software. Like the software is fine, and probably the software would be fine if I just decided to push it forward on the existing code base. And so my weak point is in marketing. My weak point is like I need to spend the same number of hours that I've spent in software development on marketing, and I'm still in this mindset of like that I need to finish this. I think a compromise I might come up with is like I could be publishing more things about the journey of building this that could be going out like as a newsletter to file inbox people. I think that's something I'd like to start up this week. And as blog posts, and I can be posting content on like the file inbox Twitter account and that sort of thing.
How do you think, I don't know if we talked about this before, how do you think about, so that those would be like journey or like more technical kind of posts versus like this is how you upload files for sign printers kind of posts. Do you separate those at all on your blog? Do you have different ways to publish those?
I do separate those on my blog. Recently, as of recoding my blog engine for File Inbox, I have a section of like guides, I call them, which are SEO pages of things people would be Googling, and I have a section of product updates. So this would be going in product updates. And I think both of them would be useful for marketing in different ways. Like, I think the product updates would be more valuable for more of like a technical audience or more of like my diehard fan type audience. I could see that also being appealing to people who are building their own file upload form, and then they find my thing and they say, oh, well, I'd much rather use this than build my own because this guy's clearly put a lot of thought into it if this is the blog post I'm reading about how to implement this thing. That's how I'm thinking about it right now.
Okay, cool. I was just curious.
Cool. Let's dive into some of the Kaggle competitions. What are you working on? And also, why is the number 3 important in getting
yes. So
gold?
I explained this just before. Sometimes it's hard. I talked about this just before the podcast, and I've talked to you about it before, but I don't think I've ever said it on the podcast. So here we go. I need 3 more gold medals before I reach the highest rank, I guess, on Kaggle, which is Grandmaster. And gold medals are top 1%, roughly. There's some math there, but top 1% finishes. And in the next 3 months, there are 3 competitions that I have a reasonable chance at getting gold medals in. So I am more excited about doing that. The reason Grandmaster is interesting is because companies actually pay attention when you hit that. There are some companies that I would love to do some contracting for, or maybe even work for, that actually care about Grandmaster status, because it means you know your stuff, basically. And so, yeah, so I'm working on at least 3 right now. There's actually 5 that I want to be working on, but 5 is too many to do at once. So I'm working on 3 right now. I think we talked about one, the patent one. I'm currently 17th out of 1,000 people, so very close. And today at 8 p.m., my submissions reset, and I think I will jump a few places. So, because you can submit 5 times a day, UTC time. So, and then there is the GPS competition, which is the one I got 5th place in last year, and I'm currently in 3rd, but there's only 70 people in that one. But the GPS one is interesting because I did all the work last year to understand the data, and the data is kind of tricky to understand. And so since I've already understood it, I have a leg up on people who are just coming to the data. So that one's interesting. And then the last one is a bird call competition, which is an audio, like it has audio data, and you have to identify endangered birds. There's like 21 endangered species in Hawaii, and so yeah, and that one's interesting. And the reason I'm really interested in that one is because if you do well, then you get your paper published, and having a paper published as an AI/ML person is like really important. And so it would just open up other opportunities for me later if I did well in that and then got a paper published. So yeah, that's what I'm working on right now. All 3 of
How
those.
fun. Several follow-up questions. I had the thought that I love the concept of Grandmaster because something I think about all the time is what's going to replace the university model. And I think it's going to look a lot like this. It's going to look like public competitions where you're graded objectively on your performance. It's a pure meritocracy. They don't care who you are. They don't care what language you speak. They don't care about how old you are. Any of these demographics that, in academia, they're paranoid about, like, we got to make sure we have equal gender balance and we're not phasing people out. Like, none of that matters. What matters is how well did you do on this objective test. That's it. And it's not like, the name brand doesn't even matter. If like, ooh, you went to Harvard or Stanford. It's like, no, how many of these competitions did you score in the top 1% of? That's what I care about. And that makes perfect, because that's what I'm hiring you for, right? I'm hiring you on how well can you solve any of these abstract problems, because I have an abstract problem that's in this weird category of thing, and I would like to hire someone who's able to solve that very well. And you've demonstrated you're able to solve those problems very well. So yes, that's all I need. I don't care what degree you have. I don't care about anything else. Like, can you solve this problem if I frame it in this way? I would love to see a similar setup for every type of thing that's traditionally something you would get from academia. Like, imagine, I don't know, medicine is sort of an extreme example, but what if there was a Kaggle for medicine that, like, people with weird diagnoses, there was a public competition to see what disease they had, and then you could become a grandmaster of that. Like, those are the people who I want to diagnose me if I have a weird disease. People who are like really good at diagnosing.
Yeah. On the topic of medicine, real quick, I saw an interesting thing, and I don't remember all the numbers. I should look it up. But the way to get good doctors, it turns out, is to ask other doctors, because when asking about surgery, they looked at like complications afterwards, I think it was, and then they asked other surgeons like to rate other surgeons basically, and they aligned with like how good or bad it was in terms of complications afterwards, like 80 or 90% of the time. Like basically surgeons know who the good surgeons are. So that's really interesting. So if you
do you feel like you could pick out good AI specialists?
If I talk to someone for 5 or 10 minutes, then I will know if they know what they're talking about or not.
If you had to solve the problem of, we need to find someone who is going to be good at solving this AI problem, and you can't do it yourself, how would you solve that? Would you interview people? Would you look at the grandmasters on Kaggle?
Is money no object? If money is no object, there are some very, very well known people who are very, very good, and if they aren't, then they know who is. So I'm thinking about like Jan LeCun or Ian Goodfellow, or like there's some people who are famous for being very good, basically, or Andrew.
Okay. What made them famous for being good? How do you know that they're good, other than being popular?
That is a good question. One way you get really good in AI is publishing a lot of papers, which is not always great at solving problems. But if you publish a lot of papers and you have a good reputation for being good, then you're almost certainly very good, if that makes sense. Yeah. That means you can get a lot of people to do work for you or with you, and you actually have results. So those two things together are probably what you would look for if you're solving an actual problem. Okay. That's interesting, though, because everyone I just mentioned is a little academic, except for Andrew Ng. So Andrew Ng was hired by both Google and Baidu, and so he's good if they're both paying him lots and lots of money. But,
That's interesting. So someone who's already well known, I feel like that's not quite answering the question I'm trying to get answered of, like how might you come up with evaluation criteria to find. How do you come up with your own rank ordering system of like who the best people are? So like, of course, you're going to put those people at the top, but everyone's going to put those people at the top, so they're going to be disproportionately expensive.
That's why I asked about money, because they would cost a lot of money to get. In a more realistic way, so that's one reason that Kaggle is great. I think the people who are ranked high in Kaggle, and also, so Kaggle has discussions, which we talked about before, discussions, and you get points for having discussions that people vote up, basically. And so you can tell pretty quickly who on the discussion forums knows what they're talking about and who doesn't. I guess it's difficult to know. So this is kind of like hiring, right? If you're a developer, you can probably hire a good developer, but it's actually probably difficult to hire a good salesperson. And if you're a good salesperson, you can probably hire a good salesperson, but it's hard to hire a good developer. And so as I get better with the AI stuff, I can tell who's really good. This is kind of like the Ira Glass quote we talked about too. I now have sort of a frame of reference in my mind of what good AI looks like, because I've seen a lot of it through Kaggle, through just me paying attention online. So I feel pretty confident I could hire a good AI person now, even if I'm not that person myself yet. This is interesting. Expertise versus, looking for expertise. Yeah, that's interesting.
Maybe I'll reframe it as, if you were looking for an affordable person to contract AI work to, how would you find that person?
I don't know. I could probably tell if I saw them, but getting the pipeline, put a job ad out, I guess, which is probably a terrible...
and then interview, and then just based on your expertise, figure out if they know what they're talking about. Okay.
I've seen, just in interviewing, instead of AI, I can talk about like JavaScript or whatever, just in interviewing for developers, I've seen way better results in asking people who you trust, who they trust, and then asking them if they're interested in a job interview. I've seen that work way more often than just job ads.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I love the heuristic too of like, if you want a good doctor, ask other doctors, because they would know that is the person who's in the position to be able to evaluate the technical skills of someone else. So I would want to ask you for a recommendation on who the best AI people are. I would want to ask a surgeon who the best surgeons are. I would want to ask an electrician who the best electricians are. Oh, from our conversation last week or the week before, I would want to ask an exterminator who the best exterminators are. Because there's a lot of like shady fly-by-night people who are preying on the ignorance of the general population of whatever this subfield is. So I agree that that's the best heuristic, and I'm hopeful that the easier heuristic of some sort of a public competition would be a good way to solve that. If there was a Kaggle for exterminators, that was some objective way of like, they all compete of like, here's this house that is somehow there's multiple of them that are exactly the same, and you gotta compete to see who can exterminate the most amount of cockroaches the fastest. And then they have some ranking of who can do it the best and with the least amount of effort, and they don't come back the most. And then I could see like, oh, there's a grandmaster of extermination in Dallas. Like, okay, that's the person I want to hire. And then I don't need to consult other exterminators. I don't need to have someone who's in the business.
Yeah. So one reason it works in AI, and it works, I say that loosely, is because there is an objective function. You know, like if you're predicting data, like you want to see your score go, down or up, whichever it is, and then whoever is the best is objectively, the best. But even in that, like, yeah, it's super tricky because like Kaggle competitions all the time. If they have data leaks, then the leaderboard is basically shot. But Kaggle has a sort of a policy of, unless it's really egregious, they don't change the rules mid, competition. And so, and so some leaderboards are just sort of worthless because of that. And so it's really tricky even with an objective function. And so I'm thinking of like, Hacker Rank, or what's the other one? Basically like the ones that are like coding competitions. But what you get there is not good coders. You get people who are good at coding competitions, which is different. They are probably good coders, but they might not be. They might just be good at coding competitions, which is different. So that's interesting. It'd be even harder in really non-objective fields.
Maybe what I want is a loss function for everything that there is. Whatever the like when I was looking for a physical therapist for my shoulder after I dislocated it, I was sort of just shooting in the dark, and I ended up picking like the third closest place to me because I started calling people who were the closest to me, and then the first one that answered their phone that sounded like they'd be okay with me paying in cash without a referral, that's the one I went with. And that's kind of a bad heuristic. Like, that's like the worst heuristic I could think. I would much rather have driven, 45 minutes if that meant I would need half as many sessions with the person, or they were going to give me the best shoulder afterwards. But what would that look like? I would want to see the loss function of some sort of an objective measurement of like, based on all of the patients that they've ever had, this percentage of them had a positive outcome the quickest, and so this is our objective score of how good this person is. Reviews are sort of a proxy for that, but not quite, because it's like reviews are skewed and reviews can be faked, and I think I just want objective scores for everyone. I want the Black Mirror episode where everyone has a social score and it's this dystopia where it's terrible, but that's what I want. And I want it for specifically for like how good at you at your profession.
I thought you're not supposed to want what Black Mirror shows.
Man, season 1, episode 1, An Entire History of You, the little camera like in your eye, I would kill for that. I want that so bad.
But it turns out so badly.
It does, but like it's the thing with Black Mirror is like the technology is not the bad part of it. That just exacerbates the humanness. So it's not like the problem in that episode was not that you had this cool thing that could record everything that you saw. The problem in that episode was these two people had a dysfunctional relationship, and there was infidelity, and there was like trust issues, and those are things that exist right now. That's the issue there. Like you could have, the thing that I love about Black Mirror, you could have had that episode without the technology, and the plot still would have made sense. It's cool, and like the problem was exacerbated because you had this technology. But I like that's the game with technology, right? Like, do you want fire because it unlocks all these other things, but also it gives you this incredible destructive power of you can destroy an entire city with a match. The trade-off I think is worth it. The things we're able to do with fire outweigh the costs.
Yeah, the person who invented the ship invented the shipwreck. I think that's the common phrase.
I like that. Cars invented, the climate crisis.
The car crash.
But
the car crash, I thought you were going to say, but yeah.
And the car crash, yeah. That's the trade-off with technology. But I like the world we live in. I choose technology. Cool. I would love to dig into the 3 separate Kaggle competitions that you're doing, because this is such cool stuff. I've said this so many times before. I'm going to say it again. I'm going to keep saying it. This is amazing. You're like automatically classifying patents or like finding matching ones, having more accurate GPS, and identifying bird calls. Like if we were having this conversation 20 years ago, I'd be like, what are you doing? These things have nothing to do with each other. Like, you can't possibly be working on all three of these things. And yet here we are. The skill that you're developing is your ability to make an artificial brain. And the problem in each of these is like, we need intelligence that's a little bit beyond what traditional computing methods are capable of doing. And so, yes, you are the person to be solving these problems. And you can do it with audio files, and you can do it with GPS coordinates and data streams, and you can do it with patents. And that's amazing. Like, this is so cool. And we're living in the future, and it's so cool talking to you about these things that you're doing. Can you just run me through a basic idea of what each of these three things is doing? What's the goal of each of the contests?
Sure. So first I'll say that even 5 years ago, each of these three things would be completely disparate fields. They'd be like totally different. But now with some of the AI advances, like they're actually really, really similar. The models we use are the same or almost the same. Like even for like speech versus vision, that like the way you handle speech is you convert it into images and then use vision models on that. So yeah, it's neat for me, someone who likes to be exposed to lots of different like fields, that I can use all the same toolbox for like very, very disparate problems. Sure, I'll do a quick overview of all of them. Okay, so GPS. The way GPS works is you have satellites in the sky, and your phone, which is what they're tracking, phones, receives a signal from each of the satellites, which is like, this is when I sent my signal, basically. And you know where that satellite is, because either the satellite tells you or you have information, like the satellites are in a known location. I mean, they're moving really fast, like 2 kilometers a second, but they're in a known location in the sky. So you take the time that it said it sent it, and you divide by the speed of light, and you get the meters to that satellite. And then if you get more than 4 of them, you'd think you need 3, but you actually need 4 because of the clock offset of the satellites. So you get 4 of them, and then you can determine your location. Most of the time you have more, like 10 or 20 or something. So yeah, that works really, really well. The problem is phone GPS receivers are terrible. And so with no work at all, you can get to about 5 meters, but this challenge is trying to get like under a meter. That'd be great. So yeah, trying to use any algorithms you can to get under a meter for terrible receivers. That's the first one. Do you want me to talk about all 3 of them, or do you want to ask questions?
I want to dig into that one a little bit. What makes phone receivers terrible?
They're cheap. So you can imagine, like with anything, right? The more you spend on the thing, the more technology you put into it, the more time you put into making sure the tolerances are correct, the better it will be. So you can buy GPS receivers that'll get you to less than a meter, which is exactly what they did. So in the back of their car, they had this big antenna with a very expensive, very high tolerance receiver, and that was their ground truth. And then they have the phones where the GPS receiver in the phone costs like $1. And it just has more noise. It has more electrical noise. The tolerances are worse. And they want to make that work as well as the big GPS receiver in the back. So that's basically all it is, a cost thing.
More noise. What does that change in the data? Like, I'm getting a signal later than I should be, or the messages are garbled and I miss some of them? What would the effect of that be?
Some of all of that. So imagine like your the really expensive one has like, if it's 5 volt, if its power supply is 5 volts, it's gonna be like 5 volts. With a phone, like depending on what apps you're running, that 5 volts may be 3.5 or maybe 6. I mean, I don't know. I don't know very much about that. But anyway, that feeds into the GPS receiver. The GPS receiver doesn't get, good voltage. It has like frequency noise on the voltage or something, and so it gets more noise. Also, even just things like the clocks that run on phones are not as good as the chips that run on these very expensive GPS receivers, and so that adds a little bit of noise, and so you jitter the signal just a little bit. And so a nanosecond in light. I don't know so Grace Hopper, who is this famous computer scientist, mathematician person, she pulls out a nanosecond if she goes on things, and a nanosecond is about a foot long. So she pulls out a piece of wire that's about a foot long. She says, this is a nanosecond, which is kind of a neat thing to show. But in GPS is really, really important, because if you're off by a few nanoseconds, then you're off by a couple of feet that way. And so, yeah, it's really, really easy for a phone to be off by a few nanoseconds, say, in their timing of things. And so,
okay, based on if I'm using more of the battery, now the voltage that the GPS module is getting is going to be less, and now all sorts of things can happen. I guess you don't know what could be happening. That's part of what the
right.
AI thing is. Like, you tell your machine learning algorithm, hey, here are all my points, and here's all the data that I think might be important, one of which is here's the current battery voltage. And then the algorithm could figure out, oh, when the voltage is low, I'm always lagging by about this amount in the signals that I should be getting. So, correlate the drop in voltage with, oh, actually, whatever the position was that it says I'm at, that was the position that I was, 100 milliseconds ago. So adjust accordingly. Is that the sort of thing we're dealing with?
Yes. We don't have access to battery voltage, actually. That was just an example. But yes,
Okay.
we have access to a lot of data that may impact the quality of the signal.
Sounds like maybe you should be looking at battery voltage, if that's...
Maybe.
Yeah. What else could possibly be impacting it? What other data do you have?
So the biggest things, if you want to dig into GPS more, okay, so the satellite, if it's higher or lower in the sky, the speed of light changes through the ionosphere and the troposphere of the atmosphere.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah, and so that matters. That's pretty well modeled, but not perfectly. So you have that. You have receiver noise, which is probably the biggest noise in phones. So that's everything we talked about, like the receiver, even stuff like where the receiver is positioned on the dash, if it's horizontal or vertical, where in the car it is, all that matters. Then you have multipath. So in cities, things can bounce off of billboards or like signals bounce off of billboards or trees or whatever, and then they're the reflection longer than they appear to be.
Yep.
And then especially in cities, you have blockages of satellites, and so you may have 20 satellites in the sky you can see, but buildings will block all but 4 of them, and then your signal goes way down. But if you remember that 2 time steps ago, you had access to 20 satellites.
Yep.
And say you knew like where the buildings were, you could sort of predict that, like I just drove past this building and these satellites went out of view, so I'm probably here, which is getting super advanced, which is where this competition is trying to go. So, all that stuff.
Figuring out the signal bouncing off of things.
Yeah.
That sounds impossible. How could you possibly figure? Because it's not, you don't have direction. You don't, like, if it's coming from, if the satellite's behind me and then it bounces off a billboard and then hits me from the front, the only thing I see is the signal that the satellite is pinging is like, this is what time it is right now, and here's where I currently am. And sometimes it says the position, and sometimes it just says I'm satellite number G23, so you know where I am. So you're getting the time and the position of the satellite, and if it's coming from the front and it's now several hundred meters longer, how on earth would you like, I guess it wouldn't make sense in the context of the other satellites, and I would have this one anomaly, and I guess I just throw that away.
That is one of the things you're looking for. Yep.
Wow, what a complicated problem. I was amazed in we co-worked a little bit on this last week, and you showed me the raw data that you have access to coming in from the satellites, and first of all, it is a hilarious data format. It's like it's a line per thing, and it's sort of like a CSV delimited by spaces, but it's like a fixed number of spaces and a certain number of columns, and there's apparently a standard way of reformatting the data as a CSV into a more standard format, but also some of the time signatures are stranger, and so it's like not a straightforward process. But I think you said it was a format developed in like the 70s. Is that right?
Whenever GPS came out.
Okay.
Also, I will say, formally, I showed you an example of the data, not the data itself, because that would be against the competition rules. So
yes, an example of the data. Yes. And yeah, man, it was so interesting seeing that the pings coming out are it's just the time and the location, and based on that, you're able to figure out, okay, if I'm going to try to re-explain something that you explained to me, which is like how you actually figure out your position from that. So I had this idea that, like, okay, if I know the position of a satellite and I know the time it took for that signal to reach me, so I know what time it is right now. I know the time that it was when that signal was broadcast. I know the speed of light, so I can just say from one satellite, okay, I'm now in a sphere of potential space, because I know the distance away that I am, but I don't know where I am on that sphere. And then you pointed out, well, also you also don't know what time it is. So so it's not just a sphere; it's a sphere that like has smeared through space. So that's just based on one signal. I know where I am within a sphere that is smeared through space. So kind of like a I don't know what shape that would be, like a donut sort of. But then also I know that I'm on Earth. I'm not going to be in some random spot in space, and I know that I'm not like inside of the Earth. So I have based on one satellite signal, I have sort of like a circle on Earth that has been smeared across the surface of the Earth. How am I doing so far?
I think that tracks. Yeah,
Okay,
that's
cool.
roughly right. Yep.
With 2 satellites, I have that same data twice. So now I'm overlapping those 2 smeared circles on the surface of the Earth. And now I just have the union of those 2 spaces where I could be. So that's like, I don't know what shape that would be. It's this is difficult to describe. It's overlapping 2 smears of circles. And that would get me like, some 2-dimensional shapes that probably aren't connected. And then with 3, I'm able to pinpoint that down to probably like 2 lines or 2 points. I'm not sure what the third intersection would look like. But
2
then with
smeared
4
points, I think, yeah. And then with 4, you get to 1
2
point.
smeared points. Yeah, so 2 lines with 3, and then with 4, I'm able to narrow that down to just a single point. Amazing, so cool. Satellites are amazing, and that's really cool that you are able to do this and figure out, like, my gosh, sub-meter. The computation in that, just I assume the solution you get, like, you won't be able to understand how it got the accuracy that it got. It's going to take into account a whole bunch of things and be able to come up with a more accurate model.
So one of the reasons I like the GPS competition actually is because you can understand most of it. So a lot of it's traditional algorithm stuff at the very end. So last year I did not get to machine learning. This year I think I will, because I understand it more. Like there's still 3 months left and I'm doing pretty well. And so yeah, I think I'm going to actually get to some of the machine learning, and that's where I will not understand. Like I will give it a bunch of data and it will spit out a number and I'll be like, okay, yeah. But up until this point I've just done regular algorithm stuff.
Okay.
So I actually do understand, what it's doing.
And I imagine one of the things you're doing is figuring out like the angle of the satellite relative to you and how much of the ionosphere it's going through to get to you. Okay. Wow. Cool. Complicated. Neat. That was that one. Patent one and the bird calls. Which one do you want to talk about next?
Yeah, we got to go a little quicker because we're running out of time. But I will talk
Oh
about
my gosh, yeah, we do.
I'll talk about the patent one real fast. We sort of already talked about that one. This one's like, so patent examiners, when they get a patent in, they have to bring up all of the prior art. And one of the parts of that is determining like what is similar in a claim. And so this thing is trying to say, based on a patent being in this category, is this word or a group of words similar to this group of words? So the idea, I think, is they can take it and they can run a bunch of claims against the entire database of claims they have and basically say if they're similar or not. We talked a little bit about this. I really dislike the patent system, especially for software. I think it's okay for other things like big pharma and stuff. There's a whole other discussion. Anyway, so if you, I think, go back maybe like a month and you can hear that discussion. But I decided it's okay to work on. So I'm working on it. And so I'm in 17th place, and I made some dumb mistakes yesterday, which means I didn't go up in my rankings, but I think I will today. So that is what I'm doing. That's the second one. Yeah.
Can you talk me through roughly how you're approaching this problem? Or are we still in the secretive phase where you can't?
It's still in the secretive phase. But I can talk about anything in the public notebooks. So the public notebooks, the general way to do it is you have a language model. These language models are huge machine learning models trained on giant corpuses of data, like the entire internet. Well, like Wikipedia plus all of, Yahoo Answers plus all of whatever. Like there's different ones. Okay. And so they sort of understand language. And then what you want to do is you want to fine tune it for patent language, because patent language is different than just general language. And so you basically feed it a bunch of data. You say, there's lots of ways to fine tune it, but you basically feed it a bunch of patent language, and then it sort of understands patent language. And then you fine tune it again to say, when you see these two things, this is a score of 1, this is a score of 0.5, this is a score of 0. And then at the end, you get a language model, and then for inference, you feed it the test set and report on the scores. So that,
and the scores are things that you're given as part of the competition. They say, yes, when you see this phrase of an automatic flushing toilet, that is the same thing as a toilet that automatically flushes.
Exactly. Yeah. So that'd have a score of 1. And then like automatic flush might have a score of like 0.75 because that's very similar. But and then automatic, driving would have a score of 0 because those have nothing to do with each other.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Interesting. Okay. That seems harder. The application of this, I guess, would be like for people working in the patent office to aid them in trying to figure out if they can grant a patent or not. you upload the provisional patent, and then your thing would scan the language in that provisional patent and then say, this looks really similar to these 20 patents, and then that person would need to manually review those 20 patents to confirm that those are actually similar. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. I'm not as interested in that one, but cool.
Yeah, me neither. It turns out I'm good at it though, so
okay.
I'm working on it.
Go for it. Let's talk about the bird call ones. Oh man. Okay. So the thing you said earlier about how all of these use very similar techniques because for things like audio, you just convert the audio to a picture and then run the same sort of techniques on the picture. You showed me today a diagram, and I forget the name of it, but it's like a spectrogram of the different audio frequencies. It looks so cool, and you were able to point at the picture and say, like, look, this is the bird call, and it's this visually identifiable piece of the spectrogram. That's really cool. What was that diagram called?
So it's called a Mel spectrogram. So you can look it up. There's lots of information online about it. And yeah, it's so it takes, you probably have seen a waveform, which looks like, a line going up and down across time, right? If you break that into frequencies, so use an FFT to break it into frequencies and then plot those frequencies over time, then what you see is higher volume at a certain frequency will be darker and lower volume at a certain frequency will be lighter, or the other way around, like the colors actually don't matter. Yeah, so a bird call, and the whole idea is that a bird call or any sound will look similar if it's a similar sound. So the bird call looks similar on the waveform or on the image in multiple time steps. So the idea is that you now have an image with something that looks similar and you want to identify that. Well, that's the same as like identifying an elephant, right? Or a dog versus a cat or whatever. So you can identify this bird versus that bird because their calls look different on the Mel spectrogram. So that's the idea.
Amazing. So cool. This is some sci-fi stuff. Like if I told you there's this advanced alien species that's able to listen to a sound and then convert it to an image and then recognize the image with the image recognizing parts of their brain, you'd be like, that's some ridiculous sci-fi stuff. That can't possibly. But that's exactly what you're doing. Like, oh man, that's so cool. I'm reminded also of in watching my nephew grow up. He's 9 months old now, and he has like some motor skill ability. He's able to walk with his little baby walker, and he's just now starting to sort of get to the point where he can understand abstract concepts. He just started saying up when he wants to get up. He can identify mom and dad, and right on the cusp of like, that's a dog. And then being able to recognize out in public, like, oh, that's a cat. Is that a dog? No, that's a cat. And that one's a dog. Once he gets that, once you've bootstrapped that basic image recognition, I could totally see him as a, 2-year-old being able to say, okay, look at this audio spectrogram. Mel audio spectrogram?
Mel spectrogram is the particular one. There's there's several different kinds. Spectrogram is the more general term, yeah.
Okay. Mel spectrogram. I could totally see showing that to him as a 2-year-old and being like, hey, you see this square-looking piece. Can you see any of those other square-looking pieces? And as a 2-year-old, I don't know if this is definitely as a 4-year-old, maybe as a 2-year-old.
Yeah.
I would think he would be able to like point to the other ones and be able to see it. Not being trained on that, like this is a novel image. He'd never seen a spectrogram before, but just by having whatever the human image processing bootstrapping is of being able to recognize images, he'd be able to just pick up like, oh yeah, okay, we're recognizing the shape. Here's all the other shapes. Man, so cool. It's amazing.
And that's why humans are crazy. So because they at 2 years old are so good at that, or maybe at 4 years old, yeah. But yeah, so this bird call competition in particular, so they've run this like every year for several years, and they have other people professionally working on this, and it's basically solved for like very common birds, like a crow or a mourning dove or whatever. They have a ton of data, and it's really easy. This year they're doing it on endangered species in Hawaii. So there's 21, or there's really like 10, and then there's 11 that are like not endangered but rare, and yeah. So for some of these, you have 1 or 2 audio files, like, and you have to then identify it based on 1 or 2 examples, basically, and that's a hard problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also a very easy problem as a human. Like if you played me a 5-second clip of a bird, I'd be like, oh yeah, I got it. I can understand that, and I could pick it out in different contexts and with a bunch of other competing sounds, and with an adult version of that bird, where the frequency is totally different, and maybe it's faster or slower. Yeah, amazing, so cool. We are running out of time, so we need to go a little faster. You are waiting on the Slack App Store.
Yeah.
You want to mention that really quickly?
Sure. I'm still waiting. They said 4 to 6 weeks. I think it's been like 4. That's why I'm doing Kaggle, really, because I'm like, stupid Slack App Store. So so I switched back to Kaggle a little bit, but still waiting.
That's annoying. That's part of your moat. Once you're in, you're in.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
Yeah. We'll get there. You bought marketingchangelog.com.
Yes. So we should have talked more about this, I guess. Yeah, I had a couple people reach out to me about it, actually, and it was really interesting. I talked to some of them, and they were very interested. And like, I bought it because it was $6, and Namecheap was having a thing. I'm not going to do anything with it. So I can talk a little bit about why. And I knew this going in, but like, basically everyone I talked to, I did some sort of mom testy questions, and some of them were even like, I know this is a mom testy question.
Yeah.
They have not looked for anything else. Spreadsheets are just fine, which is true, right?
Mm.
But there were some very interesting ideas. So like one person wanted to show it to their mentors or investors or advisors. So that's very interesting. I could see like sort of a public version of this for like, using it as like sort of SEO fodder. Like, this is what we did, and this is, so they're very interesting. And then the other is like automatic screenshots. That was the biggest one. So like, if you could take automatic screenshots and link it to Google Analytics, because they have the ability to link stuff on a timeline, I guess. So there's some very interesting features that may make something interesting. But I'm not going to do anything with it. So I bought the domain, but I'm not going to use it. If you DM me and tell me what you use it for, then maybe you can have it.
I maintain that this is a really juicy problem that I don't think you're at a place where you can turn this into a SaaS yet.
That could be true.
I would love for you to do something with it, and I think that would look either like, I think we talked about this last time, but it would look like consulting for people one-on-one. That if people want to do this, you'll walk them through how to do it. And then once you've done that 1 or 2 times, you can be like, here's the formula. You make a new Google spreadsheet, and then you just build into your SOPs that anytime you make a marketing change, what's a marketing change? It's one of these 4 things. Once you do that, then you enter it in the spreadsheet, and then you have it recorded. And here's how you set up the spreadsheet, and here's how you have the systems in place of being able to do that, and make sure all the people on your team who are capable of making marketing changes have access to it, and they know that they're going to do it. And then at the end of it, you're going to be able to have this graph, and here's how you integrate that graph with Stripe so you can see what your MRR is. Like, that could be a YouTube video. That could be a PDF that you get by signing up to your email newsletter. And then once you have that, you can market the heck out of it and help people set up a marketing change log. Like, this problem exists, and work in it is beneficial as long as there are people who still don't have a marketing change log. So like, it would be good to work on this thing. And then once you've done that, you might be in a position where you're like, oh, well, actually Google sucks because it's really difficult to upload a screenshot. Okay, well then switch to Airtable, and now you can upload screenshots. Okay, well now we can go on that for a while. But now it's hard because I'd love this over superimposed in my MRR and striping. Okay, now is the point that we make the app. And so that's 6 months before you need to write a line of code. That's all just like making videos and helping people to do the changelog. It's a juicy problem. I like it. It's cool that you have the domain. I'd love to see something done with it. That's what I got.
Yeah, I wish someone would do it, just because it'd be very interesting to see, but it'd be a long road. I think it'd be at least 6 months of consulting and stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to, but.
Okay, deal. What do I want to talk about? I talked about the funeral. I got just nothing work-wise done. Like, the day after the podcast was the whole funeral thing, and the last-minute travel. So I had like a day planning for the travel, and then 2 days of travel, and then the day after that, Sarah's dad was in town, and we did not get to see him for Passover. So we spent that day like getting ready for Passover, making all the food. And Passover, oh my gosh, this is a whole other thing I have to talk about. Passover is such an interesting holiday. I am so curious about the Jewish religion, and this is just like a concentrated, like, oh man, if you want to understand it, like, this is a great holiday to understand, because it's the group mentality of like, we've gone through some shit, and it's going to be okay. Yeah. We're going to make it through it. We got God on our side. But just keep in mind, like, be thankful and, persevere and keep doing what we've been doing, because it's been working for thousands of years. A thought that I had was the Jewish people have outlived every civilization that tried to kill them. Like the ancient Egyptians don't exist anymore. And the Third Reich doesn't exist anymore. This pattern of whatever this group of people are doing is successful enough to like be able to live through it. So yeah, beautiful. It was fun. And then also we celebrated a belated Easter at the same time. So we did some fusions of things of like, as part of the traditional Passover Seder meal, you need to have an egg. So we made it a colored like an Easter egg. So yeah. So that was a lot of fun. And then just like a bunch of administrative stuff, putting together a shed and bookshelves, and along the lines of not needing to push forward SaaS and feeling like a failure if I haven't done that. I feel really good about the lower level work I did today of like, I'm doing this work to prepare for having more space to be able to do work in. And like, that's the most effective work I could be doing. And I'll mention that today is the first day that I was able to, in co-working, work on File Inbox. And it felt so crusty getting started, and I sort of dreaded getting started, but at the beginning of today I said like, oh well, I'm just going to spend one palm just to sort of outline what the work would be, and then I'm going to get to the other admin stuff that I need to be getting to today. And after doing that, I was like, well, I have 15 minutes left in this palm, so yeah, I'll just get started on the thing. And got started on it, and it was slow and clunky, and I had to find my way around the code base. But then by the end of it, I was like, I did a thing. This is like pushed forward a little bit. I'll do a second palm on it, and then a third palm. And I made meaningful progress today forward on File Inbox, and that felt really good. So it was a good reminder of, after I get started on like getting started is the hardest part, and then once I have momentum, it's really easy. And I would like to familiarize myself with what it feels like to have left a project and be coming back to it after some time. Because that's the moment that I'd like to be practicing getting good at. Like in meditation, the core skill of meditation is not to stop yourself from getting distracted, but to practice recognizing that you've gotten distracted and then pull yourself back to being focused. In that same way, the skill that I'd like to be practicing is, okay, I've drifted away from File Inbox, or whatever my main focus happens to be. Let me practice pulling myself back and working through the crust to be able to get back in the groove again.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's just like what we're talking about with my Kaggle competition or anything else. Like getting started, it's hard. And then once you get started, you're like, okay, I feel this again, back in the groove. Yeah.
The activation energy is tough. I had a few more takeaways from episode 4 of makers.dev. That's the episode where the audio quality started getting bad. I think that might be where I started using automated tools. So I may remaster episodes 4 through like 67, I think.
All right.
Yeah. The first 3 episodes sounded great, and then episode 4 just sounded super crunchy. So I think that's when I did it. I was also amused to hear myself talk about working on File Inbox for 1 Pomodoro every weekday, and now here I am cruising at like 4+, and it feels great.
Right.
And I am getting like more than 4 times the amount of stuff I was getting done then, and more consistently. Like, it felt very good to be reminded that I've made a lot of progress on that, and I'm getting a lot more done on what I want to be getting done, and that feels good.
Good, yeah.
There was also something that came up in episode 4. You had started a new project called async.dev.
Oh, yeah.
You want to talk about that?
That still sits there. I still pay for the domain, and it still exists. It is not
Is it functional?
used.
Can you use it? Is that a...
Oh, yeah. I mean, I must have talked about this at some point. I basically realized the problem I was solving was not quite the problem I thought I was solving. I don't think, like, you can't replace Slack with a web app only, I think, is where I got to, and I don't want to. So then I was like, can I work with Slack? And you can sort of do that, but it is like super hard anyway, so I just left it. I may pick it back up at some point. At various times I thought of different things I could do with the domain, because I think the domain is really great.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just sitting there.
Okay, cool.
That's all.
Good.
I see a paramotor behind you. What's that doing there?
That's one of my administrative tasks. I want to sell this paramotor and buy an electric one, and I have no idea how hard it is to sell a paramotor. This is like a really niche, tiny market.
Yeah.
An advantage I have is that with all these supply chain shortages, I think gear is really hard to get. Like to get this one, I had to be on this waiting list for like 4 weeks or something. So if there's someone who wants one right now, they could get one right now. So I just listed it today, trying to sell it, and then I'm gonna. It was like, I don't know, $9,000 to get this, and the electric one I want to get is like $8,000. So theoretically, I'm making $1,000, but to get the new one is going to take like 2 months.
Yeah.
So I think I want to like place the order in, and then just have an extra $9,000 tied up in paramotors that, and then I'll hopefully be able to swap them out and try to minimize the time where I don't have any paramotors. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that's happening. I'm selling 2 cars. I'm selling, what else? Oh, a conference ticket I'm trying to get sold today. Lots of just stuff like that is crafting up my work time. But man, once I've done it all, and like the stuff, I only have the stuff that I need, and all the stuff that I don't need has been sold, and it's just gonna feel so clear, and like, I have so much room and time and space to work, and that's gonna feel great.
I think this came up on Twitter, but I look forward to the episode, the Dude, Where's My Paramotor episode.
Oh my God.
Dude, where's my conference ticket?
I am perfectly capable of having financial transactions in which I am not the victim of crime, Chris.
Awesome.
I only talk about the ones where it goes badly. But yeah, like $9,000 is a lot to be like, how am I even going to do that? Do I want a suitcase full of...
You have an instructor, right? I bet your instructor knows people who want paramotors.
Yes. Yeah. So I just posted it on Facebook, and I'm going to, I sort of have 2 instructors, because I have the one that I bought this from in Austin, and I have the one that I'm actually going to in Dallas. So yeah, I'll text both of them and let them know, like, hey, I have one for sale, and if you know someone who wants to buy one, I've got them. Yeah. And then that would feel safer too if it's like within the network of
friend of a friend,
those people. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah. I'll text them both right after this call, and then we'll hopefully help it get sold. Chris, that's all I got.
That's all I got too.
Then I'll see you next week. Goodbye.